You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Well, fire up your computers and your phones, and if the reception's no good, how about ingesting a few lithium-ion batteries for good measure? It's Monday night at 7 p.m. You're with us, and that can only mean it's time for Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Holly Amos. Tonight, it's time to recap and discuss Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 8, Mercy. So get yourself a little snack, like 4 giant pieces of cake. Join us as we talk about the latest in the lives of the crew of the Lacerna. As always, we want to hear from you in the Facebook chat and live with us. You know what to do. Click on the Zoom link. You can give us a ring, 669-900-6833. Enter the meeting code and password, and then you'll be in the Earl Green Room.
Yes, and remember that tonight is a very special episode. They're all special episodes, but tonight is particularly a special episode because we'll be running late as planned, since at 8 o'clock, we will be joined by Picard co-creator, writer, and producer Kirsten Beyer and writer Mike Johnson to talk about their audio drama No Man's Land, as well as the myriad projects that they have both touched in the Star Trek universe. Do not miss it. And get your questions ready for them because, yes, as always, we rely on you and your questions to keep this little operation running. So as we are waiting for you all to line up in the Earl Green Room, let's see who is with us in the chat tonight. And forgive me, I don't have my stand, so I'm looking at another device over here, and I'll try to make this the least awkward that I can, but let's say hi. Ooh, let's say I saw some new names in here right away. There's Paul. That's not a new name, but we got 2 Pauls just right off the top. We got Spencer. There's a new name for us in the live chat. There's Cosmo. Good to see you, my friend. There's Jane. There's Bob Amos.
Hi, Dad.
Of course. There's Sam. Let's see. There's Ken. There is John Cooley. And there's John Fraser. And who else we got?
Oh, lots of Star Trek professionals.
Yeah, just a ton. There's John Arminio, podcaster in his own right and great commentator on Mission Log. Let's see. There's Carlos. Always love to see you there for the live show. Rhea, welcome to the live show. And oh my gosh. Well, John Fraser says, I enjoy stuff. So that's good, and I hope that you enjoy our stuff tonight and participate in our stuff. Let's see, there's Dave, and who else we got? There's probably another Dave coming along soon. There's Michael, I believe Captain Mike as well, and there's Dominic, and oh my gosh, oh yeah, there is other Dave, so glad to see Dave and other Dave. So many people joining us in the live chat. Very happy for that. Ooh, there's Alan, the meme king of Mission Log. So wonderful to see you all. Get those questions and comments ready, and then call in, talk to Earl, you'll talk to us, and then you're going to stick around for those special guests because I can't wait to talk to them, and I hope you can't wait to talk to them either. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
I haven't seen either one of them in a while, so.
Pandemic,
thanks.
I have not seen them in ever, so this will be new, and I'll rely on your expertise to guide us through the interview.
What expertise.
All right. Well, hey, let's give you a quick rundown on what is happening in Mission Log Land before we get to the recap and then your calls and comments. Again, just pick up the phone, use the one tap, or better yet, hit that Zoom link and then talk to Earl because we don't want Earl to be lonely. And then he'll send you over to us, so we're not lonely. This week on Mission Log, our coverage of Voyager continues Thursday with Emanations. On Mission Log, the Orville. Okay, this is very exciting. They have an interview this week dropping on Wednesday with writer-producer David A. Goodman. There is Trek talk, there is Orville talk, there's talk about his graphic novels for the Orville, so check that out. Very exciting. If you want to see the video, it's on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, or you can download the audio podcast on your favorite platform, and just be sure to follow them at ML_The Orville on Twitter. Mission Log Prodigy on hiatus. We're waiting for those new episodes to drop, but follow them at ML_Prodigy for news and updates as we get them, because there will be that. There might be some special episodes coming up as well. Mission Log Engage. Follow that playlist on YouTube and, just go back and check out those episodes where Norman and I are answering your questions and comments about Mission Log and a lot of the topics that get raised on the main show. More of those are coming soon, I promise. And in the meantime, please send us your comments and questions for future installments. Try to keep those under like 12 pages. That would be great. That would be very helpful, much easier to answer that way. But the address to find all of the things happening in Mission Logland, podcast.roddenberry.com. And of course, to follow us on YouTube, youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment or Roddenberry Prod. And now, Holly and listeners, if you will allow me, I will recap you all on Mercy. Here we go. Season 2, Episode 8 of Picard, Mercy. How many things are happening? All of them, all at once. So let's break it down. Picard and Guinan start out being interrogated. Okay, interviewed by Agent Wells of the FBI, and he's actually pretty cool about things, just extremely curious if they are extraterrestrials, because who wouldn't be? He does think they're here to sabotage the Europa mission, and that's where it gets a little darker. Darker, like they could disappear in this LA basement and nobody would notice. Speaking of LA, let's catch up with Seven and Raffi, who are trying to track down Jurati, who is more quickly being overtaken by the Borg Queen. She's doing all kinds of weird stuff, like breaking windows, sucking up batteries, and, oh yeah, killing a guy because she couldn't exactly assimilate him. That leads Seven to speculate about the Queen's state of mind, her frustrations, with some sarcastic comments from Raffi. They'll have to bicker about that later, because they do encounter Jurati going ham on some car batteries, but even as they fight it out, Jurati refrains from killing them, which makes even Seven think that there is a shred of mercy, ding ding ding, the Jurati part, still in there. Let's check in on Dr. Soong's Malibu Hexagon dream house. Corey uses VR with a little bit of an unexpected assist from Q to get to the bottom of her backstory. She's shocked, disoriented, and angry to discover that she's one of dozens of creations by Dr. Soong, and then Q offers her the ultimate prize, freedom, in the form of something she can take that will wrest her away from her father's protection, a real life of her own in the world without him. She takes it, and she warns Soong that she'll call the police if he follows her. He doesn't own his creation. When Corey is gone, that's an opportune time for Jurati to show up and make Dr. Soong an offer he can't refuse. Save his legacy by preventing Rene Picard from going up in the Europa mission. Jurati just needs Soong's cooperation and a few things that he has to make her stronger. On La Serena, the kid eats cake. So much cake, while Rios and Dr. Ramirez have a little emotional breakthrough. It's sweet, like the cake. But eventually, even that has to take a backseat to the main problem. The transporter is still offline, rife with Borg bugs, and that's going to prevent anyone from getting back. And what about the man of the hour? Picard and Guinan get to the bottom of Agent Wells and his personal concern about the Europa mission. Is bad enough that the authorities may contribute to scrubbing the mission, despite Picard's best efforts to thwart Q. Speaking of whom, he finally shows up when Picard and Guinan are separated, and she figures out that he's dying. She also figures out that Wells is hiding something of a personal nature that's motivating him, and she contacts Picard in a kind of vision. When Wells was a kid, he stumbled upon a couple of Vulcans doing some kind of survey on Earth. Maybe he grew up near Carbon Creek. We're not really sure. One of those Vulcans tried to erase young Wells' recent memory with a mind meld, but got beamed out of there before it could stick. So, all his life, Wells has been trying to open up those X-Files on his own, trying to determine, if we're not alone, then who's here with us? Picard assures him it's all good. Vulcans are the good guys. But that's too little too late, because Wells has just been fired. Which is great timing, because he just let Picard and Guinan out of the interrogation room. Once out, and reunited with Raffi and Seven, they've got few options, though. La Serena's transporters are blocked by Jurati, who is luring Soong to do her bidding to get the parts she needs to assimilate humanity, leaving Picard and company with Talin's transporter as their only way to get back and defend their ground against Jurati and Soong with a mercenary group of soldiers who were about to be Borgified. Hold on tight. The end.
Yeah.
Thoughts, questions, complaints, worries, Holly? What's your initial reaction
My
here?
first thought is I'm excited that it ties into my favorite episode of Enterprise.
Really? Is Carbon
Yeah.
Creek your favorite?
Carbon Creek is my favorite episode of Enterprise. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Not These Are the Voyages.
No. Great episode. Shouldn't have been the finale. No, I really enjoy Carbon Creek. And, the Vulcan in that episode says that, these survey missions have been going on. I mean, at least it's the 50s, right? They actually crash landed in Carbon Creek. But he actually specifically mentions one that happens in the late 70s.
He does? Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Do you think Martin Wells saw that?
Well, that could very
He's the right
well
age.
be.
Yeah, he's the right age.
Yeah, you have to assume that scene took place like in the early 70s or something. So that makes sense. Yeah. That I did not put two and two together there because I don't remember the mention of the 70s being the timeline there. By the way, Earl actually tied it all together. He ties it to First Contact. So he caught the Vulcans fishing for salmon. That's what they were up to.
First Contact salmon.
Yeah. Go back and listen to Sci-Fi 5 for April 5th, and you'll get the whole story about the First Contact salmon, and that is all canon. By the way, it is definitely all canon. Hey, let's go to our first call and let's see what Rhea has to say about all of this. Rhea, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Oh,
you're quiet. That's how
herself.
you are. That's
there we
how
go.
you are.
There we go. Background.
Alrighty. Yes.
Hi.
My background's from Chicago. I had to hide the fact that I'm actually lying in bed, although you can see my pillow.
It's okay. I'm sitting on my couch. Nobody cares.
Yeah, no, you're at the bar. I couldn't find a fancy like Picard Guinan 10 forward bar or anything screenshot. So
you know what? One of us could send you a picture from the 10 forward bar here, which is the bar from set. So, we'll get you hooked up with that.
Yeah, they don't do those fancy things in Nebraska, but
yet, maybe they'll take the show on the road. I think that would be cool. I mean,
or maybe I'll move.
To be fair, they only did it here for 10 days, which is not nearly enough. But what is on your mind about tonight's Picard, Rhea?
Okay, wow. Well, first of all, I loved it. I'm loving this season. There's maybe one episode I didn't connect with, but
wait, which episode is that? I got to know.
Episode 7, the one where they're in Picard's head the whole time.
Yeah,
that's kind of lost.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
that's the one that I got stalled on the story, and so I was like,
I know that Norm liked that episode more than I did, but I feel like those two, 6 and 7 together, I felt like those were plot points that could have easily been boiled down into just a couple of moments to get across, like, here's what we need to get across. Now we're going to move on to this, which I really liked, which just feels like, okay, now the plot is getting into gear. Did you feel that way? Or
Yes. Like this one, there's so much to talk about and so much to talk about plot wise, and I'll leave that to people who are more intelligible than I am. But one thing I really
it's not us, so this is your chance. So
there's plenty of Pauls out there that can make complete sentences. So.
Yeah, most of them can. I'm not going to say which ones can't, but the majority of Pauls can.
And Stovacore cake, but let's not talk about that. Ooh. But no, back to the episode.
Yes.
One thing that I just absolutely loved, I was kind of wondering, so the whole Raffi thing, I was wondering in the back of my mind, were they ever going to acknowledge the fact that when we first met Raffi in season 1, she was an addict living in a shack in the desert.
Down by the river?
Yeah, no. Down by the dried up river.
Yeah.
And this episode, when they were touching on her manipulation, it made me so happy. Not that I'm happy that she's manipulating people and all that, but we've all been around, manipulative people and kind of controlling people. And I was once married to a manipulative addict, and, kind of seeing the, I don't know, just bringing that back. It seemed like that brought her character it just rounded out her character so much for me. And the flashback with Elnor, it just makes so much more sense now why she's so distraught and guilty over Elnor's death, knowing that she manipulated him into staying in Starfleet when really he wanted to go back to Vashti. Gives you a little insight into why she and Seven didn't quite work out. Although I think there's still hope. No, I just loved so much about this episode, but I was so glad that they brought up the whole Raffi thing.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
I mean they've been making, they haven't, the episode where they are essentially crashing the Europa Gala or whatever, you do see Rafi looking at some alcohol and then ordering like a club soda or something.
Yeah.
So they haven't outright talked about it, but they've made reference to it. The scene between her and Seven, where first of all, I think it's big of her character to like later admit that, yeah, I do manipulate people. And like, I mean, she has to come to that realization and admission in order to explain why she feels so guilty about Elnor dying, because, she thinks he died because of her. Yeah. Michelle Hurd's facial expressions when Seven is yelling at her are incredible. Like, that's A+ acting, girl.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes from both of them. And yeah, I remember that scene at the gala where she was kind of eyeballing the alcohol, and oh darn it, I had a point and I forgot what it was.
Oh, sorry, I talked too long.
No, I was going to tell you, Rhea, that in the chat, Jane is saying agreed to you with your points about all of that with Raffi, and I do think that there is. It's sort of like for better or for worse, different people want different things out of Star Trek. Something that I really appreciate about what's happening now is that there is this emotional weight and emotional realism to, I think, Seven's story all season long, even though we've gotten kind of different frequencies of her actually appearing. But I think there's a real emotional relevance to what's happening with her. And that then reflected in Raffi, who is... There's so much there with that character. Like you said, we met her with her addictions in place, and then there was that very kind of tragic, ill-fated meeting with her kid in season 1, and we realized, like, okay, she's walking around with all of this baggage. Then, of course, she's going to try to bond with somebody like Elnor. And of course, then if there's something personally motivated out of that, she wants him around, then his loss is going to sting even more. And I really like Seven taking her to task about her manipulation. I thought that was just that felt like a very realistic scene, regardless of the context, regardless of the sci-fi happening around it. That kind of human interaction felt very real. And I thought they were both wonderful in it.
And I loved how Elnor had taken her to task, with his absolute candor.
Yeah, right.
His lines were hilarious.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot. I mean, she's been called out on her manipulation, but like Holly said, it takes a big person who's been doing this her whole life to actually admit to it. And addiction doesn't just go away like that. So that's something that kind of bothered me a little bit, that, okay, she was conveniently an addict in season 1, and that's gone away. So I was so happy with how they, addressed it in this episode.
I do like to think that, it felt weird that it was there and went away. I like to think that it's the kind of thing that, oh, okay, she did in that gap in between go with Starfleet. There has to be resources. There has to be, ways for her to fight that addiction and
well, and it's not to say
path,
that it's not to say that she's not still struggling with it either. Like we see that she's eyeballing some booze.
Yeah, and the behaviors go hand in hand. The addiction and the manipulation, like those. And I guess I see them as part of the same thing, just kind of based on who I used to be married to. But she was blaming Picard in season 1. It's your fault that I'm here, drunk on the spice or the snake oil or whatever it was, when people weren't doing what she wanted, and she was responding with, addiction and substance abuse and that kind of thing. So, I don't know. Like I said, I'm real happy with how they've treated it.
I will say this, though, and it's not to take away from the very good arc that they've built for these characters, but stylistically, and this is just purely my perspective on it, my preference on it. I didn't love the placement of the flashback. because this was an episode that we already, and that's why I wrote my recap the way I did. You already had 4 separate stories happening. And then within one of those 4 stories,
Another story.
Yeah. Hey, you manipulate people. Yes, I do. Boom. Now let's go back to this time that I manipulated Elnor. And here's why I feel so horrible about him dying, because that was on my hands. I wish that there were another way to work that detail into the plot without feeling like it's so disjointed. But look, I'm here. I'm not, sitting in a writer's room on Picard. So
do you think that it should have been earlier so that we more understood her motivation?
Maybe there's a way to drop that in some other way, and then you possibly could have had 7 then go for that to say, yeah, you do manipulate people like you did with Elnor.
Ooh.
Oh no, that's a little too close to home. Yeah, I know. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I agree with that. And my first viewing, when the flashback started, I was a little confused, and then kind of figured it out, which, like you said, there's so many different plots going on at once. And I'm sure that other callers will get into this. Like, please don't do a discovery and just like snap your fingers in the last episode. I mean, there's so much to tie up here in these last 2 episodes that I really hope they do, as good of a job with that as they have with the entire season so far. But I had another thought too, and I forgot what it was.
Okay. Hey,
take notes.
well, look, while you're thinking about that, very important. It's slightly off topic here, but very important update from the chat. And that is Captain Mike saying to Dave, I followed your lead and I got a Lou Malnati's tonight in Chicago. So good for you. Like Lou Malnati's pizza, Holly.
I don't like deep dish pizza. I figured that out while we were in Chicago.
Oh, I might as well quit the show now.
I had it like 2 or 3 times, and I was like, why is this soggy?
But did you have Lou's? Did you have Lou Malnati's pizza?
I got to be honest, I don't even remember where we went. I have no idea. Ask Frage. One of the times we went, it was with him. So.
Okay, I guess. All right, Frage, chime in here. So let's see. David says, when I went out, I got the sausage, but added onions. You got it. Look, it's a very complicated thing in the chat right now. So people feel free to chime in.
But is the crust cooked all the way through?
Well, yeah. And their secret is you do a little cornmeal on there. So it gets crispy, it stays crispy. It's got the right amount of heft to hold that pizza. Look, I'm not going to steer you wrong with food, okay?
Okay, you're torturing me, because Captain Mike knows I was just in Chicago earlier today, where like 2 B-737s passing in the night and keep missing each other. So enjoy your pizza without me, Captain Mike.
There you go. All right, Rhea, thank you so much for calling in. And on that, we'll move along to our next caller. And that would be one of the Pauls, one of the myriad of Pauls who is part of the Mission Log family. There are so many Pauls. It's like a multiverse of Pauls, and we have them all. Paul, good to see you, my friend.
Welcome. Here I am. I'm saying welcome to you. Isn't that funny? Welcome myself.
I feel welcome into your office. So yes.
I had flashbacks of watching Holly look at my deep dish pizza in the room, going, "I don't even like this."
I had it 3 times while we were in Chicago, and every single one, you get to the middle of it, and it's like not cooked.
Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. Then anyway, we'll shelve
we'll worry
this.
about Chicago later.
It.
Vegas is next on the line. So I first of all, I absolutely adore Rhea and her analysis on something that blew right by me. What's fascinating about these episodes is everybody gravitates to something that's about their history or something that affects them. And the thing that got me was I'm watching Q be an FBI agent here, which is like, at first I thought the FBI agent was going to be the Q, like a different Q, but no, here's Q talking to Guinan. And then I'm thinking, well, the other guy's like a Men in Black. So I'm going back to my 80s vintage shows here and figure, would Q be better in X-Files or Men in Black? I'm open for discussion here.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess the trouble with both of those is that part of the appeal of both of those stories is all the people who don't know what's going on. And then you've got a Q who presumably could know everything that's going on. So every time you get to the end of an X-Files story, boom, like Q automatically has all the knowledge of the universe to solve that issue and categorize it, whether it's naturally occurring phenomenon or something that Mulder would be after, a supernatural or alien non-earthly presence that's causing whatever that problem is. Now, Men in Black might be more interesting because then Q actually does have the resources and the wherewithal to kind of take us all over the universe, So maybe he's better suited there. Did you guys feel, there was the whole tease when we introduced Wells. Oh, he's the same actor from Voyager, and maybe he's tied into the Wells class time ship and all. Were you hoping for that, or how did you feel there?
Totally head over my head, man. I can't remember yesterday, let alone a Voyager episode from years gone by till you guys review it.
We'll get to it in like 3 years. So,
I just thought he was going to be the Q. I mean, I thought he would have been a great Q, but so be it.
No, I thought he would have been a great Q too. I thought he would have been awesome, and I thought that's what they were leading to with that little that moment in the bar. But then people were speculating like, oh, because it's the same actor, like, oh, he's this guy from Voyager. He's a time traveler too. I'm glad they didn't go there. I think it's perfectly okay for Star Trek to recast actors in different roles and not have them be exactly the same person. We can have that with Tallinn and Laris. Like, I'm glad for the resemblance, and I think Ola Brady's wonderful, but I'm glad at least up until now with what we know, she's not the same, So I'm glad that they just left it like, no, he's just a guy, and he's just, as a kid, had this weird experience.
Well, but speaking of another Wells, like Peter Wells has played 2 different characters.
Oh, right. Yeah, of course.
Wildly similar, but not the same person.
Yes. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's the same character as Relativity. That would be an interesting connection, but
I don't think he needs to be an ancestor. I don't think we need other ancestors who look exactly like their, 13th great grandchildren 500 years later. I don't think we need more of that. I think it's fine for him to just be an FBI guy who had this weird experience, but I do hope we get him back, because did you guys feel a little slighted that at the end of the episode, they're just like, well, I lost my job. Thanks for the help. Bye.
Yeah, I have that written down here. I'm like,
okay.
Poof, the MIB is gone. He's just like, he's gone. I got fired. Within the time it took to arrest and interview, how many days was this supposed to be? Was this a couple days? Was it 24 hours?
Right.
Did somebody get fired, particularly when they hired Q at some point? Because you assume that he was responsible for getting all those agents. So it's sort of a disjointed mess, considering Q has lost his powers. So a little odd, but
definitely for storytelling, a bit of time compression.
Very compressed.
Yeah.
I have just a couple more points here, and then we'll turn it over to our good friend Alan. You have Corey now wandering around LA. Of course,
right.
People wouldn't notice in LA because people like her are wandering around all the time, So, and it's just odd. And then you have this poor bearded guy who's half Borgified, who's going to get some sort of autopsy. There he is on a garbage heap. Somebody's going to pick him up, take him to the morgue, and they're going to find something odd with him. So,
But, can we also talk about the amount of butterflies? Like, listen,
Yes.
Redbeard guy might not be, some person that makes too huge of a change in his lifetime, but like, what if he inspires somebody? What if he has a grandchild that stop squashing butterflies?
Exactly. Although I had a similar note to you, Paul, where I said, for all these things, like, it's amazing what you can get away with in downtown LA. Like that's not totally out of the realm of possibility. Like dead body, just ripping batteries out of cars, throwing people across parking lots. And you can do all of that while in an evening dress and combat boots. I might go try that tonight.
Rhea
yeah.
tried to figure out where those boots came from, and I think there's cosplay to be had. And as a collector, I got to say now, there's at least 2 versions of that dress available. There's the new version,
right?
And do you want to collect the new version or the beat up version, or some poor person is torn and will try and collect both and probably spend, I don't know, 20 grand. But hey, you got to feed the economy somehow. So
exactly.
Anyway, live long and prosper. Always good to see you too. We'll look forward to the end of this fascinating series of episodes. And over to Alan.
All right. Thanks so much. Well, hey, Alan, we're going to make you hold on for just a moment for a couple of reasons, because we're at the bottom of the hour. One thing, of course, we do have some callers lined up. We got Alan, then we got Cosmo. But if you've already called, or if you're waiting to call, do so, because our guest will be here at the top of the hour. And seriously, how often do you get a chance to talk to a showrunner from the show you're watching right now? That would be Kirsten Beyer from Star Trek Picard.
She wrote the episode that we're talking about.
She wrote the episode, and
co-wrote. She co-wrote it.
So come on, now's your chance. And I called somebody out on Twitter who was complaining about something, and well, they did this wrong, and they're like, cool. Call when the showrunner is on and let's have that conversation then. So now is your chance. But before we get to our next call and then welcome our guests at the top of the hour, time, of course, to say thank you to all of you who are supporting Mission Log on Patreon, patreon.com/Mission Log. There is so much there. I mean, look, here's the thing. Bare bones, bare minimum, if you sign up for that $1 a month, you get early access to all of our shows. You get that unedited, unexpurgated version where Norm and I hang out, we chat a bit. You get to hear all the cursing that Earl cuts out later. So you get to hear all of that. And that's worth the price of admission right there. You get swag, depending on how many, depending on what layer of support you are. You get different swag, you get different exclusive items created for our Patreon. And most importantly, at any level of contribution, you get access to the Mission Log Discord, and that truly has a life of its own. There are so many channels of discussion there, everything from current week Star Trek. I mean, literally, as soon as a new episode of Picard or Discovery or Coming Soon Strange New Worlds drops, there are people in there talking about what they just saw, and that is a very lively conversation. There's also meetups that we plan at cons and events. There's the Epicureanism board, which is my personal favorite. There is so much happening in that Discord, and you get it exclusively with our Patreon. So go over there, join us, patreon.com/Mission Log. Again, for as little as $1 a month, which I shouldn't even be telling this. You get a discount if you sign up for a year. It's literally $10.80 for a year. So patreon.com/Mission Log. We will see you there. All right.
Can I read something depressing?
I would love for you to read something depressing. Make it fun, though.
Okay. This is in relation to the butterflies.
Oh, okay. Right on.
To Catchy's in the chat, he said he can't remember what movie it's from, and Carlos is saying that it might be The Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher. I can't remember. That movie came out when I worked at a video store, but he says that somebody in it says, "I hate to tell you, but for the most people are not butterflies, and their absence has no substantial impact on history."
Oh. But I mean, come on, but you never really know.
You don't know. That's the point.
Like an individual may not, but their interaction with somebody, you don't know. You don't know. There's a lot of good conversation there tonight, but yes, Asking Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher, which was a weird movie. Let's see. And there is a good question. Who posed that? Was it Chris or Carlos who said, why are her friends only calling her Girardi now and not Agnes? Which is a little strange. That they did make that shift.
Maybe they don't know what to call her, because she's not quite the queen yet, but she's not Agnes.
True. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that's a good point. Let's see. We also have. By the way, Dominic, who says, I love the Mission Log Discord, and I love having you there, Dom. You're awesome, and we have a lot of fun on our Thursday afternoon chats. And Dom also telling us all that he recently watched Ice Pirates. Now, I don't want to go through a whole separate show on Ice Pirates, but yes, absolutely. That is It is a movie. I will say that
It
about
is a
Ice
movie that
Pirates.
exists.
It is a movie that exists. Yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining in on the chat. Keep it going. We'll keep referring back to your comments there. But let's see what Alan has to say tonight. Alan, our king of the Riker meme for Mission Log. How's it going tonight, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Hi, John. Hi, Holly. It's good to see you guys. Hopefully, my internet isn't being dragged through a sewer today. So hopefully,
You just
hopefully I won't
dropped off last week. Just
I know.
there he went.
Yeah.
Oh,
Pretty good tonight, actually. So,
good.
yeah.
Perfect. New modem working good.
Oh,
Oh, good.
excellent. Cool. All right. Well, you look good. You sound good. What's
Sounds
on your mind tonight?
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, the whole butterfly effect thing is a little weird. It would be weird if like the guy who got the Roadhouse throat rip turned out to be like, an ancient relative of Riker's or somebody.
Oh no, the beard. Oh
The beard.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
see. But
Or wait, not even the guy. It could be one of those cars. Like what if Girardi
Oh.
is ripping the battery out of a car that somebody had to go get because like they were on their way to perform life-saving surgery for somebody who's the 10th great grandchild does something important in the future. Like there are all these things that we don't know, right?
yeah, some ancient O'Brien is now going to be late for a job interview.
See? Exactly.
It's it's a whole can of worms.
That's a show I want to see, by the way. That'll be a new Star Trek spinoff, The Ancient O'Briens.
No, but by the way, we haven't. I mean, we haven't. We mentioned it last episode too because that's when this originated. But Rio's having his girlfriend and her child on the ship. Just oh yeah, he can just. Here's a replicator.
all the cakes.
What are you doing?
All the
All the
cakes. Yeah. So, but this honestly, this goes back to what I think are two of the more interesting aspects of the show that haven't gotten a lot of screen time, and I think wisely so with Seven, because we get pretty much everything across that we need to with the subtle moments that she has.
Yeah.
How much is she being torn with this experience of being fully human and in a world that she seems to operate pretty easily in. And then you have the world of Dr. Ramirez and her child, which kind of sucks. And then they get shown this future technology and this great and benevolent and very handsome Captain Rios. Like, what do they want out of their life? So these are two threads that I think are pretty
Well, because
interesting.
I'm thinking that it could go one of two ways with them being on the ship, right? It can either go the way of they stay in 2024 and they basically like have these tall tales, sort of like Wells, about what happened. We got taken up to a ship and or they take these two people with them, a la, Jillian
Dr.
Taylor going
Oh
to
yeah.
the future. But like, what if one of them is supposed to make some giant contribution? Like,
See? Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. On the official Mission Log Discord, I did jokingly
Thanks for that
post.
plug.
Yes, exactly. I did post a couple weeks ago my expert bookmaking predictions on odds for how the Rios thing was going to end up, and part amicably was 2-1. He stays in the past 5-1. She and the kid go to the future was 10-1, and she's secretly his ancestor was 20-1.
Whoa. Okay.
Oh God, is this a Bashir
my.
situation?
Oh,
Possibly,
my.
yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
Or a fry on Futurama, whatever you're gonna do.
oh yeah.
Okay, so anybody who has not seen that post, then go there and look, we're just going to start putting money on it. Okay,
Yeah.
that's what we'll do.
I take no responsibility for this.
All right, so other than weird, creepy stuff with Dr. Ramirez, what's on your mind tonight?
Oh, weird, creepy stuff with the Soongs.
Whoa,
John,
hello.
move over, Sarek. I think we've got a new worst dad on Star Trek. Because man,
Wait, okay, so between Worf, Sarek, and Adam
Adam
Soong,
Soong.
they're all competing for the Father of the Year prize.
Ooh,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, third. Second prize is the set of steak knives. Third prize,
Yeah, he's but I really like leaning into that with Brent, because one of the nice things about meeting any of the other Soongs in other Star Trek, when we started to introduce that line, was kind of the weird bent perspective that those guys had, that odd line of like playing God versus just using a new technology to benefit others. So it kind of tracks. Yeah.
But we do find out like what the connection is between Soong and Renee, right? So I mean, it's said almost passively. Jurati Queen, I don't know what to call her.
Yeah.
You either allow her to go on this mission, and then she ends up finding something that renders your work obsolete, or she doesn't go, and basically humanity falls into complete disarray, and then they turn to you to save it. That's what he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
First of all, as a car fan, I vote for Borgatti.
Nice. Oh, that's good. All right. That's canon now. So everybody, we got that. So put that in the chat. Make sure that doesn't get lost. Good job. And that's a very like Bond villain kind of thing, though.
It is, right? He's completely willing, because the presentation is that for humanity to be saved now and to not have to go through any more suffering, like he would suffer personally, right? Like, because she says that you die in 90 proof vomit or something like that.
Right. Well, that's one alternative. Yeah.
Or the alternative is all of humanity suffers.
Yeah.
And then they turn to you to repopulate the world. And that's why that's so selfish, dude.
Oh yeah.
But that's a total Bond villain thing. It's just like humanity is corrupt and terrible, so we're gonna basically kill off 90% of the population, but then I will emerge as their savior. It's
a decent twist on your Carl Stromberg.
Totally, Hugo Drax.
Drax.
Yeah.
I always think of Carl Sagan's Pale Blue Dot speech and like in Glory and Triumph for like a fraction of a millisecond. They're, to
become, masters
of a fraction of a dot. That's what he's doing.
Like a mote of dust. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty twisted, but pretty brilliant how they've arrived at that. Well, and I do like this idea. I mean, it's somebody who is very pro-science. I do like this this direction they've gone with the character who has all the ability in the world, who has all the motivation in the world, thinks that he is doing the right thing for the right reasons up to a certain point, but then gets to this crisis point where then it becomes about ego. Then it becomes about saving himself. Then all these other,
because how can he in that moment justify like, well, how do I get to the one where I'm like the savior?
Yeah.
You can't justify in that moment, like knowing that like humanity is going to almost entirely die off and suffer. But how do I get to that?
But it's good for me. I really want it to be good.
There's going to be a statue of me in San Francisco Bay.
Right.
He and Zephyr Cochrane need to have some talks about statues, because wildly different.
Wildly, yes. Yeah. Different approaches. I don't want a statue. What are you talking about?
Told him about the statue.
What else is on your mind tonight, Alan?
Oh, just I gotta say that I loved what you and Rhea were talking about with regards to Michelle Hurd and Rafi. I do think that this sort of like really crystallized and pulled into focus a lot of what they've been doing with her character over the season. I kind of get what you're saying about the timing and the placement of the flashback.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I like that a little bit better than some of the things where she's seen him just randomly in places, because that reads as crazy, and she's not crazy.
Yeah, right.
You know, there was a point where I was like, has she gone off the deep end because of Eldor getting killed? No, it's just a whole lot of guilt. And, you know, I think that works really well. And in fact, I think they've done a really good job with Raffi and Annika or Seven and Rios, in that they've been able to play the sort of inner conflicts of these characters very well with very sort of limited screen time. And yeah, it has sort of been stretched out over a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But I feel like the emotionality of it has sort of pulled through. So
yeah.
Good job, show.
Good job, show.
For sure, yeah. All right, Alan. Well, thanks for your comments, contributions tonight, and we will say goodbye for right now anyway.
Yeah.
All
Have
right.
a good one. Live long and prosper.
Likewise, you too. We have one more caller standing by who we'll get to in just a second here. It's a twofer, actually, so we'll see them in a moment. A couple of other observations wanted to drop in. One is that Agent Wells's coffee mug, absolutely gigantic. That is a conspicuously huge coffee mug, but I relate to it.
Is he related to Janeway?
Oh, maybe there's our other Voyager tie-in that he looks like dude from Relativity. There's a topic that we haven't gotten to yet, and maybe we'll come back to that a little bit after our next call or during our next call, and that is the revelation here that Q is dying, which I thought was handled great, because this whole season we've been asking what's up with Q, what's going on with him, and finally we have to have the reveal at some point. I thought it was so poetic that we have that reveal with Guinan, and we have that reveal where he is just angry, and he doesn't quite fully grasp what that means. But he has this great line where he talks about how he hoped that death was, that he met it with the warm glow of meaning. And I absolutely loved that line, that he even recognizes the drawbacks of immortality. And there's almost this envy that mortal beings get to appreciate things because they end. And I thought that was such a nice twist to have on the Q character that we really haven't had before. We've had Q lose his powers, but of course he got him back.
This specific Q, we did see a Q not want to be alive anymore.
Oh yeah. Good point.
So I mean, they can die, and they can be killed, but
only by another Q.
Only by another
Q. Up until now that we know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm very curious to see where we get with that.
Well, I think it's a nice sort of metaphor for humans and what we believe might be an afterlife, and how we struggle with the concept of death, and how we're afraid even though we don't know what's on the other side, because he doesn't know either. He's like, he talks about
the unknown.
The unknown, and I'm choosing to believe this, and like whatever he's choosing to believe is obviously like comfort to him, which is the same way that people sort of use their own personal beliefs and religions and their beliefs about whether or not there's an afterlife and heaven and hell and what that looks like. So, it's a nice reflection of the human species, which is what Star Trek's always done. So
Spencer has an interesting comment. He says, maybe this is what Q meant when he said this was Picard's penance, cheating death with his new android body. Could very well be. Who knows? And then let's see. Q and Picard kiss at the end, and their love revives Q. That's Carlos. Thank you for that. Nice. So excellent. Just very quickly, I was going to take our last caller here about the episode. That'll be Cosmo. But we are counting down the minutes until we're joined by Kirsten Beyer and Mike Johnson. So, of course, they co-authored No Man's Land. That's that bridge audiobook between seasons 1 and season 2 of Picard. So check that out. Stick around for that. And if you got questions or comments for them, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This is Kirsten's show, so let's do it, okay? All right, Cosmo, what is on your mind tonight? And I see that you are joined there by someone with a starship. How's it going?
Yes, indeed. James wanted to share a couple things. What you got, James?
Voyager.
Nice.
And
Oh.
The Cleon Battle Cruiser.
That's quite the battle cruiser.
Yeah.
I tell you, they
Yes.
don't make toys like they used to. These are my hand-me-downs from the early 90s, and they're still intact and so cool. And
Those are the Playmates,
Playmates, yeah,
toys,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
I was
yeah.
I was gonna say Diamond, but
Yeah,
we're
but
both a
no.
little
Yes,
bit
fire
past Diamond.
torpedoes, James.
Okay.
Here, I'll hold the Vorcha.
Do they?
Torpedoes.
Oh, you work on that. The button's a little.
Little
Button's
stuck?
a little sticky after
Oh, no.
30
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
He was doing it while you guys were talking, and
Oh,
so
he's got a tool there. He's got a.
yeah. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Okay. All right.
They're loud, and the engine pylons go up and down.
Oh,
Nice.
as they should.
We have active weapons. Okay.
Yeah. Nice for a 30-year-old toy. All right, James.
Yes.
Love you, buddy. So I'll try and keep this quick.
Sure.
Yeah, some of this Rafi 7 stuff hasn't really landed for me because, and it's a nature of the short season, and they are spread across so many different stories. It just seems like every time they take a minute to have a little relationship talk, they have to do it while they're doing something work-wise. And it just, what keeps popping into my head is the Temple of Doom quote, "No time for love now, Dr. Jones." Like, you guys are trying to fix this or do something super important to save the
Right.
timeline. Can we not do the passive-aggressive digs right now about how relationship status and stuff? But it is what it is. We've got 10 episodes to cram it into, and we've got to find out about Rios and all this stuff. So that's just hasn't really landed for me.
I get it. I get it. I see what you're saying, and there are some shows that I think do that to more of extreme. Some shows that do a lot less of that, and I appreciate the journey that we're getting from 7 and what is revealed about Rafi here. But yeah, it's one of those things where in a show like this, like they always have to be doing something as well. And it's like, okay, well, how do you use that time in these 10 episodes? Do you stop and take time to have them do this like over dinner somewhere? Or, well, let me ask you this.
I'm sorry,
because-
there's a Borg queen on the loose.
Right.
Really,
But-
like no time for a romantic dinner.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this then. How did you feel about that scene with Rios and Dr. Ramirez on La Sirena when they're having their sort of heart-to-heart?
It was okay. Rios has been one of my favorite parts of the season. So I just hope they come back to the future because I don't want to lose Rios. But one thing that's been hanging over my head ever since they made the announcement about season 3, there's not room for both the TNG cast and this current cast. So either we keep the current cast and the TNG people are just cameos, or all these people go away and we have full of TNG folks. So that because there's 10 episodes, not enough room for both. So that makes me a little uncomfortable going into season 3. And then
what you mean, yeah.
I've got to respectfully disagree with John about Agent Wells. So
okay, yeah.
I know Jay Carnes from The Shield, an outstanding show from the early 2000s, available on Hulu. And then that Relativity episode of Voyager is one of my favorites.
Okay.
And so when he first walked in, like some of the other folks, I thought, oh, he's another Q, because it was right after Guinan did the thing. And he was kind of acting similar to the other Q we met, the one who wanted to commit suicide. That was the vibe I was getting. So I'm like, oh, he's a Q. And then even when the FBI guys stormed in, I still thought he might be a Q. And of course, Star Trek has a history of recasting people. Zefram Cochrane and Roga Daynar's jailer. Tim Russ across multiple things.
Oh, yeah.
My problem is that you chose somebody who was in another timey-wimey episode. Casting him as Zefram Cochrane and Roga Daynar's thing, not the same thing. It'd be like if they took the actor who played the Traveler and had him show up in Picard and act a little cagey and then say, oh, no, he's just a businessman from 2024.
Got it. Because he carries this sort of like weird, mystical, timey-wimey baggage with him. So
if they would have taken Avery Brooks, who left Star Trek as a non-linear, not corporeal prophet, if he suddenly showed up and we say, "Oh no, he's just a cop."
Yeah. But by the way, can I just interrupt really quickly to say I'm glad you brought up Cisco, because that was one of my other notes that I took, because there was this really great line that Guinan has that she says to Picard, "You live in the past until you're able to reconcile it. Even if it's painful, you do the work because you want to evolve." I thought that was brilliant. It was so well written. And just think how much time could have been saved if Guinan had an opportunity to explain that to the prophets before they ever met Cisco. Done. Problem solved. Okay? Why do you live here? Well, it's what we do. So anyway, moving on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and take any other timey-wimey actor from Trek, give me Jeffrey Combs in 4 different roles of Picard, and I'm cool. That you took, and that going back to Voyager, there's the Year of Hell, where the dad from that 70s show, the Crinum, they had a ship with temporal shields, and they were able to exist through multiple timeline changes and stuff.
Yeah.
And same thing with that time cop that Jay Carnes played. So that's why I thought it was a little... That bugged me a little bit.
Well, so let me ask you this, Cosmo. If you had to speculate, do you think we'll see that character again? And do you think there will be more revealed about him? Or do you think, just if you had to guess, like, are we done with him?
Hard to say. I mean, I know we're going to have the battle with the Borgified special ops guys, so maybe
another butterfly.
Right.
Maybe it pulls in some FBI favors to go help, and I don't know. It seemed like a lot of time put into that episode to have it be one and done. So I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, thank goodness that none of those mercenaries they have any other effect on the timeline. We can just assimilate them and have them go kick a bunch of butt on La Sirena. Or
that whole scene, that whole scene, I was like, oh no, those more butterflies, and then I was like, oh, but the First Contact music.
Yep. There you go. Cosmo, any other thoughts tonight?
No, just Strange New Worlds is coming up real quick, isn't it?
Yes,
that's exciting.
It is.
Yeah.
And a quick plug of the Patreon. I've been a Patreon subscriber for years now, but just in the last month, I've started listening to your unedited podcast, and it's a lot of fun. I don't know if it's so long, but it's amazing how long you guys talk, but it's still really interesting. So if you're
I hope you don't listen to that when your son is around, because that's when we drop all the the language. Just
that's my alone time. So
okay, all right, good.
Say bye-bye.
Bye, James. Take care, Cosmo. Thank you. All right, take it easy. Hey, folks, this is a great time because we're coming up at the top of the hour. Now is the time to call back if you missed the earlier part of the conversation, and if you would like to be here with our special guests, because indeed they are very special, and they are standing by just mere minutes away from talking to us about Star Trek Picard, about No Man's Land, about the whole thing. So if you've got comments, if you've got questions, join us for this is kind of like real-time overtime, right, Holly? Where we just get to stick around, we get to chat, it's very casual. But before we get to that, any other thoughts on your end about tonight's episode?
No, I'm just scanning through my notes. You know what I'm actually really enjoying? The expansion of the Elarians as a species. Because we see her do that. You called it a vision. I marked it as like a projection.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Because we've not seen any of them do that. Because we've only seen 3 Elarians in the franchise history. So I always wanted to know more about them. And the conversation that she has with Q is great, because Q's like, oh, we haven't met yet. Because they don't meet until the 22nd century, but now they've met another butterfly. That
is, but that's one of those scenes where it's so concise and gets across so much about both of them. And I love scenes like that, where it's just, you strip down everything else, a couple of great actors in a room together, and the dialogue just does all the work, and they're wonderful in it. I thought that was a great moment. So let's see here. What else? I think that pretty much covers us for the notes, for the comments, and the discussion about tonight's episode. Had to get across my little dig about Cisco and the Prophets because you can't stop me. And now here we are at the top of the hour, and it is time to, I am so glad, folks, if you have not called in, or if you called in before and you want to join us for this extra bonus conversation, now is the time to do so. Earl has posted the link in the chat again, so you can click on the Zoom meeting link, or you can call us or use the one tap from your smartphone, and then you will be talking to Earl, and then you'll be talking to me and to Holly. But more important than that, you will be talking to our very special guest. We are joined tonight with Kirsten Beyer and Mike Johnson, a couple of experts in their own right in many things Star Trek, but very specifically where we are right now with Picard. And to both of you, welcome to Mission Log Live. Pleasure to have you with us.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Holly, it's good to see you.
I know. I haven't seen both of you in so
It's been
long.
too
I know. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Yeah.
Hanging in there.
For the last, 2 years now.
Yeah.
Just hanging in there,
Just,
trying
you
to
know,
exist.
in my house,
Yeah.
trying not to die. It's-
There you go.
Yeah.
You're succeeding. You're not just
so
trying,
far,
you're
so good.
succeeding at that. Yeah, very good. So we've got you to talk about a couple of things tonight. First and foremost, we do want to mention No Man's Land, which is this awesome, unique, original way to bridge a couple of stories together between season 1 and season 2 of Picard, this way to tell a story. And I'm curious because both of you have worked on projects like this, where you go a little outside the boundaries of filmed Star Trek and get to create a supplemental story that fills in some of those gaps. And I'm just curious, first of all, if you can talk to us a little bit about developing that idea and specifically deciding to do it as audio drama.
It's like a radio drama.
It is. It's very different from what you think of as an audiobook.
Right.
And why that particular format?
Well, the format was actually decided on by Simon and Schuster. I think there have been a number of pretty successful forays into this type of product in the last several years, particularly by like Big Finish and Doctor Who. And they wanted to move into this area, and they wanted to do it with Star Trek and specifically with Picard. So they reached out and were wanted to know if that was possible, and if so, what kind of story we would do. And it was very early. It was when we were still working in season 1. So it took quite a while to figure out how to make that happen and what the best way to do it was. But yeah, so it was Simon and Schuster driving.
Well, so I'm kind of curious, Emma, because you said you're doing this early on as you're still in season 1. Do you already have in mind, okay, by the time we get to season 2, this is where their relationship will be. This is where these characters will be. So we're just filling in the gaps. No, so you're sort of flying blind in a certain sense here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first sort of like consideration when you're talking about tie-ins is what areas of story can we develop further without risking damaging the rest of the story, right? And what are going to be the most exciting areas for people to see? And once we brought back 7, it felt, at least to me, like that was an obvious choice. And then by the time we got to the end of season 1, and it was clear that their relationship was going to go further, it just felt like a very common sense thing to explore that, and also giving us the possibility of digging into the Fenris Rangers a little bit, because that had been dropped out there, but never really gone into any depth. So.
Interesting. Mike, I want to ask your perspective on coming into this, because you, of course, you'd worked on the Countdown comics in various forms. And so this seems to be also a place where you've got a bit of experience filling in these gaps. I mean, is this a place that you find is it a little limiting, or is it more freeing because you have this, I would think about Star Trek, you have this vast universe to play with, but you also have these sort of boundaries on what happens in that universe and all this 50 plus years of history that also go along with it.
Yeah, that's the challenge. It was a fun challenge. It's always it's a fun puzzle to figure out, what story can we tell within the constraints, not only of whatever show we're tying into, but yeah, the franchise as a whole. This one was a blast because it was the first time I wrote Star Trek for actors to read, which was great. And also just having to account for sound effects. I mean, comics are my first love, but you can't hear them. So that was fun. Rather than writing sound effects out, actually writing the story, keeping in mind how can we tell it just through sound. That was a really cool challenge.
This is a really dumb question, but I have to ask because as a kid who grew up with mostly sci-fi comics, like I collected the comics that were related to franchises I already loved, like Star Trek, Star Wars, etc. Do you have a style book for those sound effects? Because like if I turn a page and somebody's firing a phaser, if it's spelled out, like do I get that same spelling 5 pages later? Or you get to make it up.
That is a fantastic question. That is not a dumb question.
That's why I'm here. That's why I get the big Roddenberry bucks.
That's a great question. Lettering is super important, and every writer has their own kind of box of sound effects. We're gonna get super nerdy deep dive here.
Let's do it.
Go-to phaser sound effect is like shkow, which is SHKOW, which is like generic energy blast.
Okay.
I also used it. I wrote Supergirl a few years ago, and that was the sound of her laser vision. So I'm not particularly, but I was writing the phasers before. I was writing Star Trek before Supergirl. So I actually ripped it off from Star Trek for Supergirl and then brought it back around. So I'm not particularly good at sound effects. There's a lot of whams and cracks. I keep it pretty simple.
Onomatopoeias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd have a good case to bring against Disney for using ka-chow? Because you might.
Oh.
I'm looking out for you. And,
I would never go up against the mouse.
Well, the time might be good now. So, I'm just, throwing that out there.
Yeah, no. But sound effects are both really enjoyable and actually really hard to get to work.
I bet. Well, hey, we have one of our callers standing by who's got questions for you. So let's say hi to one of our many Pauls who is joining us again. It's Paul Harveth, who is joined by Tendi and a cat.
Spot,
yeah.
This is hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
there
yes,
we go.
We can.
This is the scone. He just happened to show up at an inappropriate time. I want to thank John and all involved with Mission Log and Holly and everybody to give this chance to talk to you. And I, as a fan of this show since day one, I just want to thank you for your work, period. It's just the most, I don't know, particularly in the middle of the pandemic when it came out and wow, thank you. Just thank you. Now,
you're quite welcome.
That said, for Mike, we may have a spin-off here for comic books. We were discussing earlier about Q as both the Men in Black and
yes.
What was the other one?
X-Files.
X-Files.
Yeah.
So we were trying to figure out, would he be a better X-Files guy or a Men in Black guy? But for Kirsten, did Brent Spiner really want to be this bad of a guy since he was such a good guy for so many years? And he just said, listen, I need to be a bad guy. Is that what happened here?
I don't think so. I mean, he's usually game for just about anything, and the more different from what he's been able to do before, the better. But I mean, the challenge there is that every time you get assumed, there are these built-in sort of characteristics that seem to trickle down over the ages. The little hint of megalomania, the obsession with creation of life and artificial life. So it's hard not to keep trying to dig deeper in that sandbox, I think, when you have assumed, I mean, for me, the fun would be to see Brent play something who's not assumed. But
so Patrick Stewart input, last week's episode in particular seemed tremendously introspective. How much of that input comes to you as showrunner as saying, okay, we got this guy who we're writing the show for, we need to really listen to this and build it in? I mean, to me, I watched the episode, and as someone, in his demographic age group, roughly, man, they just hit the retirement, everything that hits you when you retire and you're going through the show, and it's like the elder Star Trek. And it's more than that, obviously, with all your other characters, but man, he just hits a vibe and you just roll with it. And you've done such an amazing job. How much of that came from Patrick Stewart?
I mean, a lot, always. He embodies this character, and you don't argue with that or with what he's bringing. Like in terms of the creation of story, particularly in season 1, he had a great deal of input as we were really trying to pull it together in the beginning. And we're very interested to know like what he still wanted to say with this character and where he wanted to go with it. We spent weeks together, the first writer's room, with him just sort of sharing, a lot about where he was at and where he felt Picard was at and where he wanted things to go. So we were, I think, really lucky to be able to fold that perspective into the rest of our story building and world building. And then after that, it just becomes a matter of every time there's a script, he's talking, digging into it, talking with us, working on it. And then when we start shooting, he's there every day going, maybe this, maybe that. Is there he's a very hands-on, very hardworking and just, brilliant performer. Honestly, my favorite thing is to watch him when literally he's saying nothing, because I always know exactly what he's thinking. And it's breathtaking to like be able to see that and for somebody to be able to do that. But yeah, I would say his contribution has always been quite major,
And okay, for both of you then, as you wrote the audio drama, so I look at this as Michelle Hurd's in her brand new sandbox, right? But 7 of 9 has this developed character. So I think she has a huge advantage. Do you feel the same way writing it, or do you feel in a box when you're writing for 7 of 9, even though we're X years in the future or X years in the past, as it may be now without Borg implants? Has she been freed as a character?
I don't know, Mike, what do you think?
I think it's a good point that she's not the 7 that we knew for so long on Voyager, that she is, in a way, it is like writing a new character like Raffi. The fun of this project was putting those two together. And of course, as fans, we bring with it the memory of the 7 that we knew, and how we saw her in season 1. But yeah, it was about finding out both more about Raffi as a new character and more about 7 and where she is now. And then putting those two together and how they bounce off of each other is really what gives the story life. And we wanted to tell a love story ultimately.
Well, amazing work. I look forward to the audio drama. Huge fan of the Doctor Who audio dramas. So I'll look forward to this on a drive to Chicago. And one last huge thank you for the character of Girardi. Holy cow, what an arc, and looking forward to see how this wraps up. She's just an amazing actress in an amazing role. Thank you so much. Live long and prosper, you two, and thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for sticking around, my friend. Hey, I do want to go to the some of the chat. Someone called Bob Amos.
Hi, Dad.
Holly.
Has
My
commented to say, have not listened to this audiobook, but I am a huge fan of old radio shows. They're done in the same manner as this. And then commenting on that, Jane says, yes, the story is not very long, but engaging, and all the characters are read/played by different actors. So yes,
it's like an hour and 40 minutes, I think is the runtime on it. It's a pretty quick, but yeah. So my dad, not to go off on a tangent.
Please.
My dad collected old time radios and restored them, and like has somewhere between 300 and 400, I think. And at some point, like he genuinely like had to stop because we didn't have any more like space in the house anymore.
Oh,
but,
thank goodness, all my Fibber McGee and Ollie jokes finally have an audience for that.
Yeah, Fibber McGee and Molly is like dad for a while was sort of like falling asleep to Fibber McGee and Molly. I remember it like echoing out of my parents' bedroom. So yeah, I grew up with that kind of stuff because my dad was into it. So when this came out, I was like, oh, that's like what my dad was into. And the fact that like not only do we get the two main actors, but we have like Fred Tatasciore, who is also in Lower Decks, and like we're expanding these actors who we're seeing in other Star Trek things, which I appreciate. So sound effects and like it was fun. It was fun, and it was reminiscent of the type of stuff that I grew up with because of what my dad was into. So
Related to that, Jane also says, sort of a general question is, I would like to know about Raffi drinking wine with Seven in the audiobook. I believe it's a Picard vineyard. Comments about that, because that is something we were talking about. I don't know if you saw our conversation prior to joining us, but that is something that has been a topic of conversation, is Raffi's the baggage, the difficulty that she had in season 1, and then obviously some changes that she has gotten to in season 2, but still carries that addiction with her. So there is a scene in the audiobook where that occurs. Thoughts, comments, a little deeper dive into that for either of you?
So is the question whether or not the fact that she's drinking wine means she's still
Yes,
an addict?
I believe so. Yeah.
So this is a tough one because, like, there is a difference, I think, between the snakeweed and the alcohol, although addiction is addiction is addiction, right? It feels like the substance that was really destroying her ability to function was what she was smoking. And, you know, which is not to say, like, I can't say for sure that alcohol isn't a gateway to that, but it doesn't seem to have been for her. So I'm not sure that the sort of overcoming that she did in season 1 is undone in any way by the beginning of the audio drama. It certainly was not the intention that it would be. But I do think that for someone who struggles with addiction, that, you know, she would sort of always have to be mindful of what sorts of things would trigger her most strongly. But it doesn't appear that alcohol is one of them.
That's fair. Good. Yeah. Another question for you then. So this is sort of an experimental thing here for Star Trek, that we haven't had an audio drama quite like this. And I'm sure that you are probably both aware of, like, Big Finish Audio out of the UK that have done this extraordinary job of filling in more stories with other shows. Do you think that we're seeing the first of many more to come?
Tell your friends. Tell your friends. I hope so.
Okay.
I would love to do it again, and I know that there are other great Trek writers out there who would create amazing audio dramas as well. So yeah, I really hope this is like a new branch of this Trek tree that, you know, we have all these branching shows and everything. It's I'm trying to take my botanical metaphor as far as I can, but, you know, everything's flowering. So I hope that I hope the audio dramas, that this is the first of a long line of them.
By the way, Carlos in the chat says, spoilers, give us spoilers. No. And we are joined, by the way, a very important check-in at the moment by Captain Mike. How is the pizza?
It was excellent. So I'm on a kind of an unscheduled overnight in Chicago. So I picked up my daughter who goes to college here, and we headed over to Lou Malnati's, and it was very nice.
Okay, well, Frey said that he agreed with me that it was bad. So, like, maybe I just was exposed to bad pizza.
There's something wrong with both of you. Yeah,
there are those who believe that Chicago style pizza is more of a casserole and less of a pizza per se. As a Long Islander, I believe that it should be greasy and need to be kind of folded in half to maintain some sort of structural integrity to eat it. But
as someone who grew up in Chicago, let me just say,
I
totally agree with you, Mike, that is pizza, and Chicago is lasagna-y.
I had to eat it with a knife and fork, and then it was soggy in the middle. And
I love it, but pizza to me is like, in New York City, the greasiest corner shop I can find. Like,
I do love it, but it's different, and it's a treat when I get it.
Would it make you feel better, Mike, if I just got a slice of Lou's, folded it in half, and shoved that down my gullet? Because if that's what it takes Chicago, yeah, I'm not above it because I lived in Chicago for 15 years and I love Lou's and I still crave it to this day. Mike,
Paraphrase Dr. McCoy, I would give real money to see you shove that down your throat.
I will hop a red eye just to come meet you to have pizza there. And wait a minute, Mike, because this is what I do on our show. I take it to food. Have you been to Chicago Pizza and Oven Grinder Company on Lincoln?
I have not.
Okay. What, Mike Johnson?
I have not.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Well, the next time you're back in Chicago, that's the place that does the pizza pot pie. And you're free to not call it pizza. Go ahead. That's You're not going to offend me personally, but it's delicious and it's baked upside down in a crock. They bring it to your table. They turn it upside down. It's about 900 degrees when they do, so don't touch it. And they lift that crock off, and then boom, beautiful, delicious pizza.
We were a Giordano's family on the south side.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Giordano's. Nothing wrong with that either. Well, when we're all there, we'll go up on Lincoln, Lincoln and Fullerton.
Yeah.
Chicago Pizza and Oven
like
Grinder.
Pizza hopping. Yeah.
All right. Mike, Captain Mike, get us back on topic.
Chicago style pizza isn't the only thing we talk about on Mission Log Live.
Right.
We also talk about Star Trek Picard and the No Man's Land audiobook. So I want to thank both of you so much. That was wildly entertaining. The Simon & Schuster had a giveaway that was going on the last few weeks, and I decided to use one of my Audible Amazon credits for it and listened to it last week and loved it. And also, I love the length of it, about an hour and 40 minutes or so. So it didn't take very long. And you could just sort of, the sound effects and the way it was done, you can just kind of paint the picture in your head with that sort of overexpanded thing that you get from a traditional audiobook. So that was great. The question I have for you, and it's not in the interest of spoilers necessarily, but Cosmo, one of our last callers, did say that next year we got, much of the TNG cast coming back in what, aspect and, how many minutes they'll get and how many episodes they'll be in. We don't know. It will be kind of a crowded house with the, existing, as Rios put it, a group of misfits, including a cybernetic queen intent on wiping us out and one of his old cohorts and, all of the cast that we know and love and so much. Are we going to see maybe like a Rios Stargazer spinoff after Picard season 3 wraps?
Ooh. Well, that would be a spoiler for them to answer it. So,
sure, but I think the question, did we just? Yeah, the question for me, John.
Yeah, the question is, do you like that idea? Are you opposed to that idea?
I mean, I'm never going to say no to more Rios, right? He's amazing.
He is.
Yeah, I love him. I love him as an actor, and I love that character. As to those kinds of possibilities, like I have absolutely no earthly idea. Like I'm of no help to you at this point.
But Mike, get that resume in because if there's another production coming,
sure,
The Adventures of Rios and Dr. Ramirez, get on that show. Okay.
And if he's not available, I'll I'll throw my hat in the ring.
Yeah,
I'm sure that would work out just great. But no, just thanks so much for being on the show, giving us a chance to talk to you. I think, I loved what Patrick Stewart said at STLV a few years ago, that right now we needed this show to kind of show us the way, to show us that even though season 2 has shown us going down a very dark path, we don't have to, and we can correct that. And we can make these small corrections now before things get too far out of hand. And it does give, I think, those of us that do believe in a brighter future for all of us some hope. And thanks for keeping that alive.
Or we can squash a bunch of butterflies.
I would say sometimes what you're describing, Mike, takes finding a body in an alley in downtown LA. So... But,
always, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've been here. Yeah. So, all right, Mike, take care. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Nice to talk to you, Mike.
So I've got a question. I realize that there's no one way that a writer ever approaches any project, but you both have had your hands in a multitude of places, books and graphic novels and audio and TV. And I'm curious, especially for something within the Star Trek realm where you have established characters, you have these, sometimes more loosely defined parameters, sometimes hard parameters. Do you feel like there's any one thing that comes first? Is it, so for example, Picard or a story like No Man's Land, is it we want to get these characters from point A to point B, or is it more like we want to tell a story that has these particular elements or this particular point, this particular thing to say to the audience? Or is it just sort of whatever happens at the moment that you're creating?
Well, for me, it always starts with character. These are people that, for better and worse, live inside my head in a very real and detailed way, and have for a very long time. I mean, I've been writing Seven of Nine's character in the Voyager relaunch for 20 years before I even, started this. So it's always about where they are. And in the case of like this project, we knew where they had to get to. But there was a lot of ground to cover. And in so many ways, the most interesting part of their story felt like, how would these two even manage to connect? Because they both have so much baggage and such difficult histories. But just like on a surface, writing level, for me, it's always character and emotion, obstacle, and how are we going to overcome it?
Mm-hmm. And Mike?
Yeah, it's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle where you're sort of creating the pieces as you go. You're picking up things like we knew we wanted to, in addition to everything that Kirsten described about our main characters, we knew we wanted to show more of the Fenris Rangers. We knew we wanted to introduce an interesting MacGuffin in the story, which is the Lemniscate in this case, and by extension, the characters, the professor and his wife, and how their story sort of became a mirror for Raffi and Seven. And so as you start to put these pieces together, new ideas form, and that's the plot really grows out of that. The plot of we go here, we go there, this happens, this happens, this happens. Once you've kind of got your pieces together, then you really formulate the story as a whole. And I think we had an advantage here because we did, even though we were within the confines of what we could do with the characters, it's a big universe out there. So we could create new planets. We could explore things that hadn't been explored as much, like what's the status quo out there in what's left of the Romulan Empire. So we could introduce this Romulan character that we wanted to sound a little different from Romulans you'd seen before. So really always starting with character and then pulling in different pieces of things that you want to show, that you want to play with, building the story from there.
I'm curious then, because you're both aligned on character, which absolutely makes sense and absolutely is how any number of writers would approach something like this. Is there some point of discussion then that enters the room when you look at Star Trek and its overall legacy of having something to say as social metaphor, political metaphor? Do you feel like that's something that sort of naturally comes into the storytelling as you explore the character journey and go, oh, wait, now we can tell this story that has this present day relevance, that has this message? At what point, how does that enter the development?
I mean, in some ways, especially with this one, it's already baked in, right? We have a world that was destroyed by this ecological disaster. And we have all kinds of people, having no home worlds left. You have folks with limited resources trying to pick up the pieces and just sort of, there's a moment where I think Raffi says, you guys are really holding the universe together with your bare hands, aren't you? Like, that has always resonated with like this moment in our history, right? So I think I feel like in some ways what you're asking is like, is there an agenda that we come in with, something that we want to say or want to talk about, and we lay that on top? And for me, the answer is no. For me, it's enough that we have already created this sort of very complex and dynamic reality, and then figuring out what that means for these two main characters and for actually all of our characters is sort of the task. And by keeping that as real and present and as forward in your mind as you can, that part of it kind of takes care of itself. You know what I mean? Like, I never feel like I'm intentionally messaging, but there is a level of, I don't think you can finish something that I've written, or in this case that Mike and I wrote together, and not know kind of where, at least this story has come down on any number of issues.
We're right up against the clock here. I know that we have to go. Alan in the chat has a great question specifically about TV here. He says, serious question, what are the challenges in trying to write an individual episode in a season-long story arc? This is something we've been discussing in the Discord quite a bit recently. I know that's probably going to take a lot more than 60 seconds, but I'm curious if you can address what Alan is asking here.
Well, the challenge is always creating a single story that is also part of a bigger story. In the case of a serialized show like Picard, on the episodic, I'm working on Strange New Worlds. That's an episodic thing. That's a totally different beast. And it's its own delightful, joyful thing. I think the challenge is always, you got to tell a great story, and you got to have characters moving it along, and it's got to be fabulous, and it's got to fit into the bigger picture. But the nice thing about it is you're never alone, right? You've got a room of incredibly talented people. You've got very great peers and showrunners who are going to be with you every step of the way, and are also going to be, then there's all these other brilliant people who come in, the actors, the production designers, the costumers, who piece by piece bring this thing to life. So as much as the writing is like the beginning, there really is so much more to the episodes, and I don't feel like all of this weight and pressure is on just me or just my co-writers. It's on all of us, and we're all sharing it, and that makes it lighter.
Excellent. And just one last thought here from Carlos says, I really love these stories and novels that fill in the blanks between episodes and series and helps retcon things like Peter David's Vendetta. And that, my friend, is what you get in No Man's Land by our two fabulous guests. So thank you to Kirsten and Mike for joining us. And if anybody hasn't yet checked it out, well, you missed your chance to get one for free from us, but at Simon Audio, or you can go to their website, and we'll tell you how to get a copy. So yes, No Man's Land, the audio drama that takes place between seasons 1 and 2 of Picard. Kirsten and Mike, thank you so very much for taking a little time to chat with us tonight.
It was our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was so fun.
Bye, Holly.
Bye.
Bye.
Holly, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And with that, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live by the indisputable Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcast. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/Mission Log. Thank you, Holly. Thanks to everyone who joined us live or later. We look forward to talking with you next week.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.